How well can you understand English? Let's find out in today's video. Together, we're going to do some English listening practice, and I'm going to see if you can understand the 5 levels of spoken English. I'm going to start by speaking slowly, but with each level, I'm going to get faster and faster, and I'm going to use more advanced vocabulary. I want you to see which level you can reach until you stop understanding me. Let's start with level 1. This is the most basic level of English, and I'm sure you can understand everything I'm saying. I'm speaking very slowly, and I'm not using very complicated or difficult words. I receive a lot of comments asking me if this is how I speak all the time, and the answer is no. When I'm speaking with my friends or family, I speak more quickly. I also tend to use more idioms and more slang. Unfortunately, not all native speakers speak as clearly as I'm speaking right now. And if you come to an English-speaking country, it can be very difficult to understand what people are saying because they speak so quickly and they use words that you probably didn't learn at school. The problem with the education system in many countries around the world is that it focuses mostly on what we call textbook English. Textbook English is the English you learn in the textbook. And in many cases, it's the standard or correct form of English. But just because something is correct on paper doesn't mean it's actually used in the real world. So just studying English from a textbook is not going to prepare you for the real world. That's why I always advocate for learning real world English. When I say real world English, I mean the English that people actually use on a daily basis. As I said earlier, that includes slang and idioms. Whenever I teach slang, I get a lot of comments from my students saying they don't want to learn slang. They only want to learn the correct way of speaking. But unfortunately, you have to understand slang even if you don't use it. One of the best ways to pick up slang is by watching movies. I strongly advocate for using movies or any other authentic material to learn English. Authentic material is material for native speakers, written or produced by native speakers. So when you're watching a show or you're watching a movie and there's a word you don't understand, pause the video and write it down. One of the best things you can do as a language learner is to keep a diary or journal of new vocabulary. Believe it or not, even in the age of the internet and AI, I strongly advocate for using a pen and paper to do things the old school way. Writing something down by hand in a journal is a highly effective way of memorizing because you're actually connecting an action with the new vocabulary, and that helps your brain internalize it and memorize it. So watching movies is a really good way of learning English, and it's a good way of picking up vocabulary that you might not have learned in the textbook. But believe it or not, watching movies is not the best way of learning English. If you've been watching my videos for some time, you know exactly what I'm about to say. If you want to become fluent in a language, you need to speak that language. Speaking is what we call the highest ROI activity you can do when learning a language. When I say ROI, I mean return on investment. And in this case, the investment is your time and energy. If you're going to spend your time and energy doing one thing, it should absolutely be speaking. A lot of people move to the US or Canada or the UK or Australia or any English-speaking country for that matter, and they expect that they're going to magically become fluent overnight, when in reality, that's just not true. In fact, we have a lot of students in our programs who are in the US, they're in Canada, they're in the UK, and they've been there for quite some time actually. In some cases, 10, 15, or even 20 years, but they're still not fluent in English. And they're not fluent in English because they spend most of their time with people who are also from their home country. And of course, there's nothing wrong with that, but if you want to learn English, you have to speak English. Regardless of whether you're in an English-speaking country or not, if you've made it this far into the video and you can still understand what I'm saying, give yourself a pat on the back. Because right now I'm speaking a lot more quickly than I was at the beginning of the video, and I'm also using vocabulary that might be testing the outer limits of your lexical capabilities. One of the biggest challenges of being an advanced student is that it's really hard to progress and to break through to the next level, because as you get more advanced, your progress inevitably slows down. If you think back to when you first started learning English, everything was probably pretty simple. You learned the fundamentals, you learned grammar, you learned vocabulary, you learned all of that stuff, and you probably thought that this was it, that learning English was easy, that it would always be this easy, and you would always find it simple to acquire new vocabulary. But most students at the advanced level have reached a plateau because, to be honest, you're so high up there that there's less to learn. If you're already 100 feet from the top of the mountain, you can only climb 100 feet more. It's impossible to make it up 1,000 or 2,000 feet. So there's a lot less to learn, and what you do learn is actually not always the most useful. I'm going to be honest with you. A lot of the academic words or the really long multi-syllabic words that you find on a C1 or C2 vocabulary list are not actually words that native speakers use on a daily basis. So it's tempting to take one of those lists, to memorize it, and to think that, well, if I memorize this list, I'll be at the C1 or C2 level. When in actuality, what gets you to that level is not memorizing lists. It's simply more exposure. It's more time in the trenches, more getting knocked down and having to pick yourself up, more getting into uncomfortable situations where you can't understand people, asking for clarification, speaking, making mistakes. So what was the moral of this video? Put yourself out there, practice speaking English, and you will improve. Let me know in the comments, how far did you get? What level did you reach? And was it easy or difficult to understand me? If you want to study English with me in more depth, click the link below, and I'll see you in the next video.